Welcome to Akhand Vidyashram, the first institute of impeccable wisdom. Today we are going to talk with Divyank, the divine design of nature, and I'm glad this is the greatest discovery of the human mind for seeing the universal consciousness in totality is Divyank only. And you see the mathematical design at 22 by 21 to the power of 10, 0.34419 equivalent to 1.61803. This is only mathematical design, and the symbol you can see, which is the outer orbit at 22 by 21, then 10 pentagons and 5 tetragons. This is a symbolic representation. The entire world, student from school, college, university to PhD to research to ovulation to everything, they need to know only this particular thing and nothing other than that to tell the world what is the impeccable wisdom, what is the perfect design of the entire universe. And there is no problem whatsoever. This is the most challenging thing, and I want every student of the world to understand this concept, and we are going to see the applications day by day. I have already done, but this sequence is going to be complete itself as we move on, much more detailed than my other works. But it has the my copyrights. It cannot be copied by anybody else. It is supported by trademarks, copyrights, and other thing. It's better that anybody who takes a copy of this acknowledges in the name of Shiv Bhushan Sharma. Now there comes the question. I always start with a concept ever since my childhood. Whenever I have a doubt in anything or any difficulty in understanding, I always look up to universe. It's a natural process. I see the universe is perfect in every way, and all the answers come from universal consciousness only. Whatever I see in the world is the perfection, because I see perfection outside and also perfection within my body. That exactly what I've learned from Vedas, Upanishads, and Akhand Bharat Brahman scriptures. They spoke of the perfection, and the perfection within the body, perfection outside the body, and that finally when becomes one, and that is moksha, that is universal consciousness, that is enlightenment, that is education, that is empowerment, and that is what has been my search since my childhood in this life. And that's what I call Aham Brahmasmi. I'm like God. Everybody is like that. And Tattvamasi, every sign of the divine nature is identical, and that is Divyank is this. Now comes the question. I say, make it. You see the top picture, you can think it is me. I agree. And I have written 10 chakras, and I have experienced 10 chakras and associated with the autonomic nervous system, endocrine system, homeostasis, nervous system completely, and also with 10 planets of the solar system and 10 suns of the spiral galaxy, and also the universal consciousness as such. That is a correlation without any difficulty at all. Human body is not made of 7 chakras, it is made of 10 chakras plus 3, 4, 4, 1, 9, and very, very clear. And same thing I see everywhere. There is no disparity in my mind, in my consciousness, and bringing back to this mathematical design, I think is the greatest achievement of my life, which happened in 2014 and 2015, and have shown about 22 by 21, then 10 stage of development, and Shivam, all the three already. This is a fourth culmination. Now, as I told you, this is the greatest statement of Chandogya Upanishad. It does not mean I'm like God. It means divine nature, and every object of divine nature is identical. And I make it very, very clear. We are talking of the perfect object. We are not talking of the imperfect objects. I make it nature made perfect. If there are imperfections that has gone because of certain things, we can still be perfect and talk of the perfect anatomy, physiology, biochemistry, and psychology to bring the uniformity in knowledge. Giving the knowledge on diseased aspects or defects is not the knowledge which world should have. Knowledge should have of the perfect beings, as perfect as divine nature, as perfect as human being, as from top to bottom. That is what I've been trying to say ever since my childhood. Now explanation, Divyank, why? Because the divine design of nature is not at all known to anyone in the world as complete. And I make it very clear, till 2014 and 15, the precise, concise mathematical design of nature was not recorded anywhere. Sectarian aspects were there, but everything given to the world was man-made defective concepts. I'm again saying man-made defective concepts, not the divine design. So the objective was to recognize, conceive and reveal the divine design of nature is what is Divyank all about. Now I'm making one statement very, very clear as a medical man and as a spiritual scientist. There are three stages of manifestation, and Sanatana Dharma talks it very clearly. When it talks of three stages, it talks of Lord Brahma as the first stage of creation. Everything is started by Brahma as creation and the first stop of production or formation or synthesis. The second, there are 10 stages of development, not 9 and 11. That's also very specific. That is Vishnu, or Dasavatar. Then third is Lord Shiva, which is the Lord of dissolution and regeneration. And then whole production started only thereafter. And that is the beauty which I am talking about. But in the process, Brahma does not have a family, Vishnu does not have a family, but Lord Shiva has a family. Why? Because Parvati is the one and Shiva together can produce that because they are complete by themselves. Whereas Saraswati and Brahma are the process of evolution. Lakshmi and Vishnu are the process of development. The completion is only in Lord Shiva. That's why it's called dissolution and regeneration again. They only after dissolving three stages, when they form to the stage as a perfect human being, and Savitri, you can call it, or Parvati, you can call it, is the first person, and Shiva together, Shiv and Shakti, let's put, only children produced in this consciousness, Sanatana Dharma, only Shiva, whether it's Kartikeyan or Ganesha, they are two sons. That's simple as that. Once that is understood, you understand things go very well. Same thing I see in the formation, manifestation or synthesis or formation of every object. You're going to see that. Now, Brahma, as I told you very clearly, the first stage of creation is an orbit of 20. This is what you can see in Akhand very clearly. The background of Akhand is this particular picture. You want to see more of it. Then first stage of creation, as I told you, human cell under the compound microscope are made of only three parts: cell membrane, cytoplasm and nucleus. You can call it Brahma, Vishnu and Mahesh as such. When you see under the electron microscope, you can see every part as a 7 parts and there are 21 parts. That's it. But there is one part which is very close to the nucleus called centrosome, which is two centrioles in it, which become 22 at the first time of creation. So as a result, 21 part becomes 22 parts is something which is very clear in Brahma consciousness. And I make it very clear. Lord Brahma is shown by 3 plus heads, and that is 22 by 7 as pi. 1/3 of that is 22 by 21. That's where the creation starts. Then thus this particular picture shows that there are only 10 stages of development. Less than 10 or more than 10 is defective, but 10.344 is the precise one. The last stage of Shiva is 0.344. I've shown in the last video again. Now come to the question of giving a formation in the cellular level. Red blood cells are the one which can be perfect example of Divyank. If you see very clearly in this thing, the germipotent or stem cells from which red blood cells appear is of 21 micron size, and it becomes 22 micron in the first stage and goes to the 10 stages, and finally 21 become 7, which is 1/3, and all the process which I have been talking about mathematically about divine mathematics is there in red blood cell itself. And this picture we will discuss much more detail as we go on. Now all this information are Lord Brahma and Vishnu was presented in book Akhand in 2002, and values of 22 by 21 to the power of 10 is very clear in this particular piece. What is beyond that was not known to me in 2002. I make it very clear. Shivak was recognized in 2014 and 15 only, and first published as Divyank, the Divine Constant, in 2015, which have further gone on to evolve to Akhand, and now I am talking about complete one thing as a new segment for the world to follow the education required. The education given in all the books in all over the world is defective. The next generation throughout the world should follow only these videos or my books, so that there is uniformity in concurrence throughout the world, and that's the beginning of the new era of truth, a Satyayug. Now come to the Gurukul system. My inner direct with intelligent student is I'm going to talk about it, how the education should be in school, what was in ancient Indian Akhand Bharat instruments of education or schools. I remember a student, MBBS student, asked me a question which was very enlightening, and he was very innocent, very civilized. He was not a vagabond or person who's trying to raise question. Very simple person, honest person. He asked a question, are red blood cells a living cells? It's a very natural question. And the question was awakened my mind, because I am a medical doctor, I am a spiritual scientist, I am the person who's talking about it. And somebody suddenly asked me a question, are the red blood cells living cells? And for a moment, I had to depend on my inner dialogue to give the answer. And I'm making it very clear. I have an inner soul, Aditi, which is divine consciousness. She is the one guides. I am only an instrument of vocal. So now the dialogue between the boy, me, and my Antaratma starts. The sense of my inner dialogue goes like, red cells are not living cells. I make it very clear. When I say red cells mean the formed red cells. I am not talking of the primary cells from which red cells develop. The formed cells at the end are not living cells. Then the question asked why they are not living cells, and I make it very clear, because these cells do not have a nucleus, and for new formation nucleus is very important, and very honestly I said it's a nucleus. Then they go. They can be reproduced new cells. Nucleus has to be there because it has to have a genetic structure. Only genetics will multiply and produce mother to daughter cells. So that point nucleus was absolutely right. But that question came from me within, not now with the student. Living cells when produced next cycle. Then immediate question is, the neural cells have a nucleus, but they cannot reproduce. Imagine. First student asked me a question, I gave the answer. Now my Antarama is asking me a question and I have to give an answer to everyone including Aditi. Nucleus is there with neuron cell, but neuron cells cannot reproduce. They have been made 100 billion neuron cells in the body. They remain the same, nothing less, nothing more, except let the damage otherwise. Cannot reproduce. And memory stay, and that is divine design. Neurons cannot reproduce, cannot replace, they remain assets for great memory system which is required for every living being. Fantastic question. But the question comes up is, but they cannot reproduce. Why they cannot reproduce is my Antaratma is asking me. And question answer is, centrosome is missing in RBs, red blood cells. Now nucleus is there, RBC, no nucleus, no centrosome, but in neuron there is nucleus, but centrosome is missing. And it is centrosome which splits into two centrioles at the time of creation of a living cell. But that is not the case in neuron cells. Because there is no centriole, it cannot divide at all. And of course, since there is no nucleus, there is no material. So it has to come to a dead end. It's like a RBC. RBC cannot reproduce, so neuron cells cannot reproduce. That's it. And I think that was the dialogue which I want every child, every student, every researcher, every author of the entire world to raise that kind of question and see how beautiful is the human mind. We are truthful, honest, and perfection only can make us. Otherwise, we are like a Dumbo cat, copycats, and that is what is happening in the education of the world. Whatever is said by some of the scientists and neuroscientists and mathematicians, physics, chemistry, long back, everybody is copying, trying to find fault that nobody is trying to do things new at all. No wonder from my experience with simplified Kundalini Yoga to my PhD research work and thereafter my interpretation of wisdom took a new shape, and that's it. Now comes the question. Now this is the Ganit Vidya. I make it very clear. The divine mathematics is something which world should know, not man-made defective things. Now it is, I've made it clear, it is not Aryabhata who invented zero. Zero was discovered by the human mind from the very beginning and as a shunya in Bharat itself. Then how further description are seen in mathematical design in the cross form of the plant kingdom primarily. And this was known as the Fibonacci sequence. But incidentally, if you see, it starts from 0 again. 0 to 1, 1, 2, 3, and this is the something which was a new awareness of mathematics. And I am very happy to say Fibonacci sequence said it has come from India, not from anybody else. I credit him for that statement. Although he has given this to the world of the West in 1202, but this was come from India, which Akhand Bharat Brahman taught it to Zoroastrians, Zoroastrian taught to Arabs, Arabs taught it to the West, and West came to realize that it has come from India and recognized as Indian, and I think that is something which is wonderful to do. Then goes to the next stage of development to see precision how we move on. And the Fibonacci sequence showed the world there is a mathematical design as 1.618, and I think that is a very good job on the gross level. I appreciate and admire. Then mathematicians of the West started looking at the mathematical design to find this number, not through Fibonacci sequence, with their mental abilities, and that's where they come. 1 plus square root of 5 divided by 2 is the 1, which gives you the infinite number of digits. That is a confusing lot. Upper is too simple, lower is too complicated. Both are defective is a question which I raised, and they do not really talk of the ratios of divine nature as such. Both were defects. We needed to go beyond. Then to go beyond, we had to first find out what is length and breadth of the golden rectangle itself. This picture was well known, which was used to find 1.61, and I have seen what is earlier length is something which I have shown it with my work as the following one. In this particular picture, I have already shown a Divyank rectangle, how 100 into 100 was made into 100 into 161.80. That is first enlightenment of the wisdom which the world needs to know. And I am sorry to say this particular process could have been done by any of the mathematicians before, but unfortunately no one has done till 2002 itself. This is something which appears in my book 2002 itself. Then come to the question, infinity number is 61.8034. Not the man who knew infinity, the number he has given is not correct beyond 100 and 200 times. But this is a number which is perfect, both with involution wise and expansion wise. I have shown it very clearly in my work. And this particular thing is also very clear in my book Akhand and 2002 itself. How from 100 divided by 61.8034 can be divided only 10 times, not bizarre. And that was only to point the 10 stages of development. And that was a fantastic thing. And I've gone further to show much more in my further books. Now come to the question of Shivank. The third stage is 0.34419. And you see this particular picture is very clear. You have a lotus flower, which is Lord Brahma, which represent 22 by 21. Then you have 10 arms of Lord Shiva, which shows 10 stages of development. And you have 5 heads, which represent 0.34419. I think that is again realization that this is where the complete perfection of the Purusha is all about. Purusha has to be Brahma, Vishnu and Shiv, all the three together as the Tattriya. That is, Anasuya made Brahma, Vishnu, Mahesh into one form called Dattatreya. That's why Dattatreya is very important for me, and Divyank is Dattatreya by itself. Now come to the question of 5 heads I have shown, and all the 5 heads are exactly the same thing, which add up to 21. So that's why it shows it's a beginning and the end at the same time. And this is where I go to show this particular admission could have been done by anybody before, provided they were looking at the nature to give them answer. But unfortunately, human beings, they think they know everything and nothing in nature is there. So self-realization or aham brahmasmi or tattvamasi is not at all with scientific world. That's why they call them the atheists. Without spirituality, science cannot be complete. It's a spiritual science which is complete, and that is exactly my point is. And that is where the question comes up with. Now comes the question, how did I find this particular number 0.344? I have already shown in Shivam with the help of Professor Govindaraju, who was my teacher, who was in Madras Medical College, became to Chettinad University. We sat together for days to discussing it. Finally, we sat for 2 days to work on IBM SPS version 21 to find this number. I am glad we found that number. Having found that number, I have shown it in Shivank also. This is 21. That shows Lord Shiva's dissolution. He is the only one who can produce life as such. Not before that. He is capable of a living cell who can produce further life, male and female as such. I think that is a very interesting thing in Sanatana Dharma. Now there comes the question of the replication of Divyank in the human form. In this particular picture, I have seen Divyank DNA, the perfect B double helix. Now, if the universe is as such, macrocosmic you have seen, but microcosmic, it has to be DNA level, because it's the DNA which is going to replicate as it is. But that DNA has to be the same thing as the nature, and that is where now something coming to a very applied part. Unless until we have the same blueprint in genetic structure of DNA of the human being, that human being cannot be perfect. So we got to see Divyank in blueprint with which this girl, and that was something which happened with me as we moved on from 2000 to 15, and it continues to be more and more elaborate and detailed. Now come to the question of my dharma is impeccable wisdom. Divyank is that 22 by the first stage, 10 stage of operation, and that is what God is all. And 1 point is godly divine ratio, and that's it. Now come to the question of human B double helix, which is produced in the world thanks to James Watson and Francis Crick, who got awarded Nobel laureate in 1953 for designing DNA structure. Thanks to they brought it life much easier for me to work on, because I also need something from scientific world which has been done, and to see how far they're good. I'm not like other scientists who are trying to find fault and adding new fault. I have to rectify once for all with impeccable wisdom. This is again turning point, because it has to have a genetic structure which is there in the universe, which should be the human body to produce a perfect human being. What these two people along with another two people have done is something which I'm going to show you next. Now you see in this particular picture known B double helix picture, you can see on either side. Now I'm going to show. They said the width is 20 angstrom, not 21. 21. Height is 34, I agree. This 21 and 34 is much better as 5 or sequence, is very clear. But he said 20 and 34 is not as good as 5 in a sequence. Each strand is 3.4, I agree with it. Number of strand is 10 is what they are talking about, but I say it is not 10, it should be 10.33 34419 as such. Minor groove is 12 cent, no issues. Major 22 XN, no issues. Two enclosing chains of deoxy sugars and phosphoric acid chain, absolute. Opposing 3 and 5, no issues according to the nitrogen chain of adenine and thymine as one part, guanine at other part, no. And binding chains of 2 and 3 exactly according to Divyank only. So except for the length and breadth and strands, everything else is perfectly fine with these two people. Hats off to them, the wonderful job. They made my job much easier, and I think let's go on to complete with the perfection, not find fault with it and make another fault. Let's do something which completes one's work. Let them give us credit. They were a wonderful job. I have had the privilege of divine consciousness to tell me how to make it perfect. Now come to this is a picture which I have designed based on Divyank as such. The width and height and other things I am going to talk about it as we proceed. Now comes the question. I have written the width as a 21, not 20. Each strand is of 22, is very clear as a 22 by 21 is concerned. Number of strand is 10.34. This is something much more precise than 10. Height is 33.9854 and stuff, and that is, I'm talking about the perfect, I'm not talking of the other things which are there. My point is again perfection, perfection, perfection only. Minor good 12, no issues. Major 22, no issues. 2 sugar chip on either side at 3 and 5 starting point, absolutely clear. Central nitrogen, adenine, thymine is exactly same. Guanine, cytosine is same. Binding of 2 between adenine and 3 is absolute correct. 3 between guanine and cytosine, absolute. Now this is the perfect design which I have designed based on Divyank. Now I'm going to show you something more than what they have not done. And explode expect Divyank BWX, I'm showing it. Deoxyribonylate has got 72 and phosphoric acid 50. They are 122 and both the sides put together are 244 protons. Now I am bringing it down to proton levels to show how divinity has been consistent at the proton levels. Let's not talk of electrons or neutrons. Let's talk of only protons which are specific. With it any induction. 3 and 5 is absolute. Now comes the adenine and thymine. Both have protons of 70 plus 60C equivalent to 160. First bond of adenine and thymine has got 160, 36 protons. That's it. Second bond has got cytosine and guanine, and these have got 78 plus 58 equivalent to 106. Both the bonds have only 136, 136 only. I think that is amazing. Now come to the number of strands. I told you 10.12. The full length is this, and this is something which was not discussed earlier, but this is something is required to show how precise, concise is the wisdom of divine nature. We should see everywhere the same story. Once we have that knowledge for every child should be perfect. Think rationally, scientifically to become a scientist and a mathematician to move on. And that is what I'm trying to show how. Our education should make make optimum use of 100 billion neuron cells, use them effectively, and as a result they will be able to produce 8 Hz frequency throughout the 64 parts of the brain with eyes open senses and have a perfect knowledge of walking talking encyclopedia. I want every human being to be educated perfectly, and that's one mission of mine, that all the human beings throughout the world, irrespective whether they come Russia, America, Europe, India, China, anyone, All human beings have this design with the same thing, to bring peace to the world. We want loving peace with a perfect education. Today we have wonderful equipments, but we need human mind to operate on artificial intelligence to show the perfection and perfection alone, nothing other than that. Going to that, now I'm going to show the picture. Upper two symbols are the ones by the scientists as such. You see two pictures. Now you see the Divyank picture down. Don't you find there is identical picture? Once that is identical picture is understood, I can tell you, you understand the divine nature. And first and second top ones, one is electron microscope, another is a compound. The lower one is mathematical design. You move on, and that's it. Now I've gone to this. I'm not going to talk about it. I think step by step we are going to see some things which education has given us to think, but not made us to think beyond. We are trying to find fault, but not finding it direction. Here now with this, if we re-look at the entire maths, physics, chemistry and medical sciences, we'll have a perfect knowledge of entire thing as such. That is the objective we are going to see as more and more clearer as we move on. So thank you very